Hello and almost Merry Christmas. I know it's Christmas Eve, which really isn't a holiday, but welcome to Heart and Mind episode 19, where my goal today is to make you too clever to fool in the new year. Now, I am really enthusiastic about this show and all the shows. Normally, if you're here with me today, you're like, wait a minute, what day is this? Because normally we broadcast this show on Tuesday nights, but because Tuesday is Christmas Eve, I decided most people are going to be busy with wrapping gifts and cooking and traveling. Let's do it a day early. So I hope from next week you will join me on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, please know, I know live streaming and catching a live stream can be a little challenging, especially at this time of the year. The good news is all of these shows are also recorded. So you can go on Daily Clout site, you can go on Rumble, and you can type in Heart and Mind, Dina McMillan, and you will find all of the shows recorded. So it gives you an opportunity if there's information you find really important and want to review or to share, it's a way of doing so. Now, I don't think this is your first time, but if it is, please know I am a social psychologist, and I am not a clinical psychologist. I don't have people come in and sit on my couch and tell me their problems. Social psychology is much broader than that. What we study is we study the brain, we study behavior, we study interactions between people. So we look at how people learn, how they're influenced, persuaded, manipulated, coerced, indoctrinated, and even brainwashed. So if you've watched this show before, you know I call social psychology the evil science, because we don't just look at what happens organically. We actually conduct experiments to see how we can influence someone to change their beliefs or their behavior or both without alerting them that it was an external force that pulled their strings and made them change what they thought or what they did. So yeah, it's a little scary. Speaking of being a little scary, I really hope you will support Daily Cloud by buying your own copy of the Pfizer papers. Now, the Pfizer papers feature the latest analysis on the Pfizer clinical trial documents. You know, the ones they tried to keep hidden for 75 years? Those. It's a great way to start the new year being smart and aware and enthusiastic and informed. So go to Amazon, type in the Pfizer papers, and get your own copy so that you can know what's really going on, whom to trust. Let that be something you think about for the new year. Now, in the previous episodes, the two previous episodes, number one, we talked about tips for successful New Year's resolutions. So if you go on Daily Cloud or you go on Rumble and you're looking for previous episodes, I hope you look on that one. Because I had a lot of fun with that one because it was such a positive thing, giving you tips on how to use our knowledge of how the brain works and how influence works on yourself to encourage you to make really worthwhile goals and make it easier for you to stick to them. And then we also talked last time about why the moral high ground in this tumultuous time is actually the smart move to make. Now, speaking of smart moves, speaking of what's going on, let's talk about your physical health in addition to your mental health, in addition to your emotional health, let's look at something else that's going on. So, let's talk about Native Hydrate. Now, Native Path is a wonderful company, and here is the mixed berry Native Hydrate. It's my favorite this week. I go between that and the tangerine. Most people know that staying hydrated is essential to nearly every bodily function. But did you know 75% of Americans still don't consume enough fluid daily? As we age, natural bodily changes make staying hydrated even harder, especially without artificial additives or excess sugars. That's where Native Path comes in with extra help. Native Path's Hydrate is not just another drink mix. It's a thoughtfully designed formula packed with BCAAs and all 9 essential amino acids to help with muscle recovery and overall vitality. Plus, it's completely sugar-free and 100% natural. With their Native Hydrate product, you can fuel your body with essential electrolytes at the cellular level for overall vitality. Unlike other hydration drink mixes that are designed for marathon runners, I don't know about you, I'm not a marathon runner. But this one those contain upwards of 1,000 milligrams of sodium. My system can't handle that. Native Hydrate contains only 230 milligrams of sodium for optimal daily hydration. Free of artificial flavors, sugars, and dyes, it's only 5 calories per serving, and it tastes great. Right now, you can get up to 44% off just for being a listener of our show. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee, 2 free gifts, plus free shipping. Visit nativehydrate.com /dailyclout. That's nativehydrate.com /dailyclout to see what Native Hydrate could do for your health. Again, the site name is nativehydrate.com /dailyclout. Now, let's go back to the show. What are we doing today? Today, we're talking about the tactics that are used to most likely influence and persuade you. I want you to be too clever to fool. I actually told Dr. Wolf about this show that I wanted to help make people manipulation proof. Now, we've been going through a lot of different tactics that are used. I thought I'd just boil them down into some of the biggest ones, some of the strongest ones, some of the most effective ones, and put them all in one place, make it easy for you to look. Again, if you think this information is important, please come back. Go to one of the sites that has it recorded and watch it again. Also, please recommend this show to your friends. Do you know someone, a family member or a friend that you feel is easily manipulated and you want to help them? It's often easier coming from another source rather than you. Sometimes people will listen to anyone else but their loved one. If that's the case, I definitely have the credentials to discuss this information, and perhaps they'll listen to me, especially when they notice that what I'm telling them actually works. When we talk about these things, keep in mind that you can actually see them being used on you. It's always really exciting when you spot something being used on you and you know how to fight against it. Now, speaking thereof, as usual, we're going to go through the tactics, but before we leave, I'm going to show you how to shield yourself and protect yourself and your loved ones from these very cunning tactics that are being used on all of us to try to manipulate and influence us. Now, some of these are called subtle levers of influence by Robert Cialdini. Now, I've mentioned him several times because he's one of my favorites. He's a social psychologist that spent an enormous amount of time, effort, and energy putting together information for the greater public. He doesn't just write for journal articles and things like that for other social psychologists. He writes and puts information together, and he even has videos. You can go on YouTube, see some of his videos. He has books like Influence and Persuasion. He's very clever. Now, I'm not only using Robert Cialdini's information, but I always give credit where credit is due. And some of these, the way he's expressed it, makes it easier to understand and easier to remember. Now, before we go into that, I want to talk to you about something that I feel is a big issue. This has been a really tough time for many of us these last several years. I don't know about you, but my cost of living has gone up 50% over the last few years. And that is really tough because I don't know, it's been tough to afford that. Now, increased tariffs on our trade partners, tax cuts, and regulation changes. Learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever. Birch Gold, the only gold company that I personally trust, is releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. To get your free copy, along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold, text Daily Clout to the number 989898. Isn't that easy to remember? Now, here are the facts. The national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt also continue to increase. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar. And Birch Gold is still the company I trust to help me convert an existing IRA or 401k, and I hope you will too, into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Just text Daily Clout to 989898 for your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. There's no obligation, only really valuable information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews, and thousands of happy customers, including me, you too can trust Birch Gold. Text Daily Clout to the number 989898 today. Now, let's look at the manipulation tactics that are most successful at getting all of us to change our beliefs, change our behavior. Now, I want to be honest with you about something, and I like the fact that Robert Cialdini admits this too. Everything I talk about on this show still works on me if I don't pay attention. One of the reasons I put so much emphasis on workable, effective tactics to resist these methods is because I have to use them too. I still have to edit what I watch, what I read, what I expose myself to, because some of the tactics we're going to talk about will start to eke in, even though I know better. I have all of this knowledge in my brain about why this isn't right. But unfortunately, as we go further and I start talking about how the brain works in the simplest way possible and in a way that can really help you figure out whether something's for you or not, is that the parts of the brain that make 88 to 95% of our decisions don't have a filter. So they take in whatever we expose them to, and they start adapting to it. So we have to be careful. There are so many things in our environment where people are trying to manipulate you. They're triggering your emotions, your primal drives, or they're manipulating you through social conditioning. It's known as a fixed action pattern. It's like you're walking down the street and you bump into somebody and you automatically, oh, sorry, automatically you apologize. If you're in the UK, you apologize for just about everything. They say sorry for everything. But there are a lot of fixed action patterns that we have in our lives, and we're going to talk about some of them because often clever, cunning, devious influencers will use those fixed action patterns, that social conditioning, to try to get us to do something that doesn't really benefit us, it benefits them. Now, I'm not trying to be mean, and I understand that if you have a product, you have to sell it, okay? But if it's not really benefiting the people that you are selling it to, then you're taking advantage, and I don't like that. And I'm sure you don't either. You wouldn't be watching this show. Number one, social conditioning, fixed action pattern has to do with reciprocity. In almost every culture on the planet, since time out of mind, the giving of a gift came with an obligation to reciprocate. So when somebody gives you something, it's by the time you're, 10 years old, it's on automatic. When somebody gives you something, you feel like you have to give them something in return. And if you're old enough, do you remember when there used to be people in airports that would hand you a flower? Or even now, when you go in a store and they have people giving away food samples of a particular brand, you are far more likely to buy that brand if they give you the sample, not because the food is necessarily so much better than everything else, but because subconsciously you feel an obligation to give them something in return for them giving something to you, especially something as important as food. So it's really clever. So if you don't want to be influenced into buying something that you didn't budget for, or that you will leave on the shelf or put in your fridge and it's going to spoil, do not take the free samples. I see people crowding around those free samples as though they're starving to death. Don't do it. It will set up a sense of obligation. You don't need that. Liking. Another thing that people will try to do is get you to like them. Now, some of the things we talked about with persuasion and some of the things we're going to talk about now, you're going to see a link. You're going to see how they're linked to each other. Because if we like somebody, we're more likely to do what they say. We're more likely to buy a product they recommend. We're more likely to take their advice and even ask them for advice. We're more likely to do something for them, even if it's inconvenient. So people who are trying to influence often will try to get you to like them. Now, in my domestic violence business, we see that a lot. Abusers work really hard, especially during those early days, to get their target to like them so that they trust them, so they want to spend a time around them, so they'll listen to them, take their advice, so they will turn off their instincts and guard and not be as protected. Watch out for people trying to get you to like them. Now, another thing to think about with liking, anybody here ever been to a Tupperware party or Amway? Okay, I'm a sucker for those. Oh my gosh, when they have those clever little things. But the reason that those businesses have lasted so long and done so well is that the parties are hosted by somebody who's popular. That's how they get people to come. So you're already buying from somebody you like. You're not thinking about the Amway company. You're not thinking about Tupperware. You're thinking, oh, I want, Susie's approval, and I like her. I want her to like me. So I'm going to buy these products. And you may not even consciously do this, but it really works. Now, if they're able to trigger desire or fear, it's also a way to gain rapid compliance, unquestioned compliance. That's why beautiful women make so much money modeling on expensive items, because they want the males watching it. Because when you're talking about wealth, there's still more in the hands of men than women. They want the men watching to feel desire for that woman, to associate that product with being able to get and attract and keep a woman like that. So they're more likely to open their wallet and actually buy it or do it or sign up for it or believe that person. And the same thing goes with fear. Everybody can relate to this one. The COVID era was all about controlling through fear. We did 2 whole episodes on the power of fear because it is the easiest way to get someone's attention, and it's the easiest way to control someone, because our brain is already designed to pay attention to threats. Our survival depends on it, but people can take advantage of it. Now, also vulnerability, where you feel weak. If you're female, you understand this one. Pick up any women's magazine and look at all of the things they tell you are wrong with you and that they can somehow magically fix with their new product, their new operation, their new way of dressing. They rely on you feeling vulnerable in some way, feeling you're not sexy enough, you're not attractive enough. If you're male, they often say, are you smart enough? Can you compete with your peers? They go for that vulnerability to get your attention and to get you to trust that they have a solution because they say they do. Now, for me, anything I tell you on this show, any episode, try it out and see if it works, because it does. I don't gain anything. I'm not selling you anything. So I don't gain anything by lying to you, but a lot of people do. So you have to be careful. They're going to look for your vulnerability and claim that what they have can solve that vulnerability, can shore up that weakness. Or here's another clever thing they do. If they are promoting something that has a dark side, that has a danger associated with it, what they'll often do is try to appear safe and vulnerable and to get you to say, oh, you know, there are so many dodgy charities that gained millions of dollars from having pictures of really pitiful kids in third world countries who looked like they were starving or that they needed medical care. And you would it would pump up your emotions and your pity, and you'd say, oh my God, poor baby. And you'd sign on, you'd send them your money, they'd spend it. The kid would never see it. You have to be careful. We're going to talk about what to do about these things. I'm not saying some people don't genuinely need help, but we're going to talk about how to shore up your defenses so you aren't taken advantage of by somebody appearing vulnerable, by saying, oh, I just want this little bit of something. And what they want is everything. They know if they get a little concession from you, it is much, much easier to get ever larger concessions. If they can breach a boundary by making themselves look pitiful, it is far easier to breach other boundaries one after the other before, and soon you end up, you don't know how you got there. How did this happen? It's absolutely terrible. So while we're talking about vulnerability, let me mention something for a minute. Because again, talking about heart and mind, I've got to include the body. And right now we're in the holidays. I love the holidays, love the decorations, but it also means sick season. Sinus infections, strep throat, upper respiratory hacking. I have a neighborhood with that. Everyone is traveling and passing it all around. But guess what? You don't have to deal with it this year. Why? Because this little blue case is your mobile urgent care. It has ivermectin, Z-Pak, amoxicillin, and 6 other prescription medications that will be at your fingertips. Thanks to the wellness company's medical emergency kit, you can tackle anything severe your body comes across without ruining your holiday plans or winding up in urgent care. This kit cuts through the red tape by allowing you to take control of your health versus being reactive and inconvenienced during precious family time. You don't need a gatekeeper because their medical board created a guidebook that outlines common treatments for UTIs, strep throat, bacterial infections, respiratory illnesses, and more. All it takes is filling out a digital intake form and your kit arrives at your door in 1 to 2 weeks. We still have several months of winter left, which means colds, flu, sinus infections. There's still time to do this. Travel and live with peace of mind this season. Order your kit now by heading to dailycloudhealth.com and using the code Dr. Dina, that's DRDINA, to save up to $30 off, plus you get free shipping. Now, this is for USA residents only. Now, let's talk about more things. This is the number one. You know, I have a big thing about this because the average person doesn't recognize how powerful attention is. If you look on social media, for instance, everybody's showing a replay of that poor woman in New York being burned alive in the subway. I had nightmares about it last night. I don't know about you. But anything we pay attention to seems more important and it gets our attention. We look at it, we think about it. If somebody comes along and says, hey, I can fix this, we're likely to believe them. Some things do need to be fixed. But to our primal mind, attention equals importance. And a lot of people trying to influence you will take advantage of that. So you need to be very careful. If you see a lot of things getting attention again and again and again, and I've run episodes where we talked about this tactic before, where I showed you scripted lines on every single news show, like 25 different news shows, all saying the exact same thing in the exact same way. Giving attention to something, making it important to a wide range of people, and it works. I want to tell you something, it works. Another thing that works that's tied into that is the repetition. I remember Elon Musk making a comment, during the election, asking why Democrats all seem to use the same lines with regard to different principles and policies and whatever. They'd use the same 3-word line. Another 3-word line that you hear all the time, diversity is our strength, right? You keep hearing that over and over and over again, or whatever you hear. If you hear the same concept or see the same concept repeated again and again, it starts to be processed by your brain as being true, even if it's an absolute falsehood. I know that's discouraging, but again, remember, when we get to the end and we're almost there, we're going to talk about how you can protect yourself against this. One of the ways with repetition is just start to notice it. Stand back from it and ask yourself, what are they trying to get me to think is true? Don't just buy into it. Don't say, oh, it must be true because lots of people say it. Don't be that easy. Now, here's something that a lot of Daily Clout audience members may find close to heart. They triggering a sense of obligation and guilt in order to take advantage of you. Now, we have gone through 5 years of anyone white, especially if you're a straight white male, being told that you are intrinsically bad, that everything is wrong with our society is your fault, that if some ancestor 5 generations ago owned a slave, that you therefore owe reparations to any Black person you meet. Amazingly enough, how many people did you see kneeling with kente cloths, bowing to groups of Black people, allowing diversity hire promotions and hiring practices that have undermined the company, that were unfair to everyone there, allowing racist things to be said by people in positions of authority without you pushing back? That's what they did with this. And by the way, it hasn't been 5 years. They've been working on this probably since the 60s, as the socialists started taking over the universities. They started undermining people and making people feel bad for the accomplishments of Western culture. They would emphasize conquering new territories, and ignore completely that the people being conquered had conquered other people too. It was the way humans have interacted since time out of mind. So they're making you feel guilty about being white, about having married parents, about this word privilege, white fragility, white women's tears. I actually wrote a chapter in a book called Cynical Therapies, edited by Val Thomas. And the book, my chapter in the book was on the negative effect of critical race theory being taught and emphasized and demanded by people in the therapeutic mental health professions. So they don't get to be therapists anymore. They're expected to be left-wing activists. And I wrote a chapter on how damaging that is. So for all of you, if you're white, stop with the white guilt. If you didn't do it, it's not your fault. If you are a minority like me, stop buying into that. In order for us to go forward together, we all have things we need to fix. Every culture has things they need to fix. Before we start pointing the finger at someone else, we need to fix our own cultures. I know my culture has a lot of things that are wrong that need to be fixed. So don't trust anybody that tries to get you to do something out of feeling guilty about privilege, or, because you didn't face all the challenges they did. Don't buy it. Social proof. Here's another one, very common. Often people will try to get you to do something by saying everybody else is doing it. There's a primal part of our brain that actually buys into that because it wants us to stay in step, in harmonious step with our group. Because from time out of mind, being isolated and alone meant you had no protection against predators. No one would come to your rescue. So they take advantage of that by often falsely claiming everyone likes this, everyone does this, and especially if they're clever enough to say everyone in your group is doing this, they can often convince us to buy something, do something, sign on to something that's not to our benefit. Acclaim. I also want you to pay attention. Stop watching award shows. Because right now, award shows are just about rewarding people for adhering to the woke narrative. It's not about talent. It's not about being deserving. But it also, again, on the primal part of the brain, it is very powerful. Once someone wins an Oscar, they're no longer called by their name. It's no longer Denzel Washington. It's Oscar winner Denzel Washington. Same with the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prize winner so and so, so and so. So the acclaim really counts and they know it, but they use it as a manipulative tool. Focusing your attention. We talked about questions that people can use to focus your attention on some aspect of your personality or something about yourself that you want to be true. Asking, are you someone who cares about the environment? Are you someone that thinks fair play is important? And then they talk to you for a while and then they sell you something that they claim is going to make that true. And by focusing your attention on something, they make it true for you. And they can do it in a negative way too. Have you been having trouble sleeping lately? And you remember the 2 or 3 times in the last month that you woke up several times. You're not focusing on all the times you slept straight through. No, it focuses your attention on something so they can later get you to buy something, to sign on to something, to commit to something through purposely focusing your attention on something very small, very narrow. Authority. This is one of the biggest problems with the COVID era. We had paid off scientists and leaders, political leaders, and top-ranking celebrities, people in position of social authority, all telling us to get vaccinated, to stay away from each other, to treat COVID like it was the Black Plague. When someone has authority and they misuse that authority to get you to comply with something, unfortunately, at least 8 times out of 10, they're going to be successful. This is also the reason, if you are in an abusive relationship, one of the earliest tactics used by abusers is to ask for a lot of small concessions. Oh, can we change the time we meet? Oh, can we sit over there? How about if we try this dish instead of that dish? How about we share something? So you're being nice and friendly and well-mannered and you want them to like you and you give in to these small concessions. But your brain interprets that as this person having authority over you. Those small concessions all really count. And before you know it, that person is able to give you orders and you comply without thinking about it because they've established authority. So we have 2 things here. We have somebody who genuinely has authority. They're the leader of your country. They're the leader of your party. They're your boss. They're your parent. They're somebody who makes more money in your friendship group. The person who's the most successful often gains authority over everyone else. Or there's someone who uses clever tactics that, of course, I'm going to describe in later episodes to establish authority over you so that they can quickly get control over you, get your trust, get control. And interestingly enough, the tactics abusers use also bring emotion with it. So you also start to care about this person. Scarcity and exceptionalism. Another thing used by abusers, they will tell people, I've never said this to anyone before. I've never felt this way for anyone before. Salespeople will say, we only offer this to people that we think are part of a small, select group. We only give this to the elite. Or they tell you, this has been so popular, it is almost gone. What happens when you go on Amazon and you're going to order something and they say 3 left. If you were thinking maybe I'll come back later and see if I still think I need it, you're far more likely to push buy if you think there are only a few left, and if you don't do it now, you're going to miss your shot. So like the others, this is more complex than it seems. Scarcity, saying it's almost gone, trying to make it seem like only exceptional people are allowed to buy this, do this, have this, be this, or saying I'm treating you better than I do anyone else. You are part of an elite select club. And what happens with that, you will do almost anything demanded in order to stay in that person's good graces. It's very sneaky, scary, and highly effective. Speed. Anybody ever gone to buy a new car? I know when I went to buy a new car some years ago, the salesperson tried to give me this great deal, but he also said that deal would expire once I left. It was one time only. Either you sign now, buy this car, or you have to start over and this deal may not be available. Being me, I said, fine. And of course, when I went back, I got an even better deal. But trying to get you to make up your mind quickly, again, as with the previous case, it's why they say, you see that little clock ticking saying only 3 left, only 2 left. They're trying to get you to make a decision really quickly before you have time to think about it. And how often have we all been convinced to sign on to something, to buy something, to commit to going somewhere or doing something because the person didn't give us enough time to really do a cost-benefit analysis? They basically made us decide really quickly. And it's an unfair method, but again, like all the methods I'm talking about, it's annoyingly effective. Commitment and consistency. Ooh. If someone is able to get you to say, I will do this, it's another reason. You know the questions we were talking about, focusing your attention? If they ask you, are you somebody who cares about the environment? And you say, yes, I do. I care about the environment. You're going to try to make decisions that are consistent with that. Making that commitment, I care about the environment, you're going to take yourself seriously. And for a short while after that, you can easily be manipulated by someone who's going to who's telling you, in order to be consistent with that, here's the commitment you need to make. They hand it to you. Sign here, buy this, go over there, commit to that. And the way our brains work, unless we accept a definition of ourselves as flighty, we're probably going to give in and say, okay, I'll do this. So, 80 Chris made a little comment here about conquering depression and anxiety with the help of psilocybin mushrooms. Okay, that has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about, because one of the things that I tried to emphasize on this show, I'm not saying it doesn't work. And in fact, if you follow Dr. Naomi Wolf, she has done extensive study on natural treatments, and I follow her for some suggestions. But I don't have that expertise, so I can't comment one way or the other. All I know is I try to emphasize things you can do easily, you can do right now, and they do not require medication, natural or otherwise. Now, with commitment and consistency, this is one of the things we're going to talk about in a minute, because all of us, as I said, unless you see yourself as being flighty and airheaded, and you define yourself that way, if you say, I am this, I do that, you're going to want to consistently stay with those behaviors. It's one of the reasons Weight Watchers is often successful, why programs often work, because people get up and say, well, with Weight Watchers, they say, I am committed to reducing my weight by 50 pounds. Wow. So they want to stay, they made a commitment and they want to be consistent. So when they're looking at food, they're going, if I'm going to reduce that weight, I have to go and see those people next week. They'll notice if I've gained weight instead of reducing it. With AA, you admit the problem, you stand there, and the whole purpose of being there is finding the strength to not do it again. That commitment and consistency are incredibly powerful. Normalization. And now I quickly have to talk about this because that is one of the most insidious methods that is being used by the woke and has been in my entire life. They normalize whatever they want you to do. They will have characters in the stories that we watch and read that encounter someone with this new behavior that the left progressive who transformed into the woke want to promote. So they have everybody in that story, whether it's visual, audio, whether it's a group podcast, everybody approves of that new person, that new behavior, and often they will approve in a very subtle way by just not remarking on it. They will have someone with an alternative group come in and they'll act like it's perfectly normal. Nobody says anything. Nobody remarks on it. Nobody discusses any issues that could arise in real life if that person came into the group. It's one of the things your brain will do automatically if you keep exposing yourself to information with certain cultural values, sexual norms, etc. It's why I said at the top, you have to be very careful to edit. If I see woke casting, I see woke values, even if it's a show I would normally enjoy, I turn it off. I send back the book on Amazon. I stop listening to it. I stop reading it. I don't look at the story. I don't read stories that are promoting values that go against my values. I just won't read it. I won't watch award shows because right now they're dominated by the woke. So all they do is reward people for woke values and they're normalizing it. If something goes against your values, do not allow your brain to normalize it. If you keep exposing yourself to it, even drawing attention to it and saying, I don't believe that, will not do any good. Remember, the bulk of your brain will adapt and normalize whatever you keep exposing it to. Now, there's another thing too, the power of we. Saying, we do this and we do that. When somebody's trying to pull you in and get you to do something, claiming they're part of your group is a very powerful way to gain your compliance, to try to stay on their good side, to believe what they say. They may not necessarily be your group, or you can be like I am. I know that a lot of people that I follow on social media, that I vote for or whatever, they have certain beliefs I don't share at all. So I know that. And I'm not going to share those beliefs just because they do. That's what freedom means. They don't have to share every single belief that I have. I'm not a left-winger who says everybody has to follow the narrative or we bully them and pick on them. I don't do that. But I also notice. And when they talk about that thing, I'm like, I have too much evidence that that's harmful. I'm not going, until they can convince me that I'm wrong, I'm not changing my mind. But people will use that power of we to get you to do all kinds of things. Be careful who you consider part of your group. So if you have any questions, just ask me. If you have an opinion, ask me. Over these last 10 minutes, you know what we're going to do? I'm going to talk about how you can combat being influenced by these methods. Easiest way, notice if you have a strong reaction to something that's being presented, either positive or negative. If you do, don't trust yourself. Don't buy anything or decide anything while you're in a heightened state. Let yourself calm down, walk away. It gives you a chance to get more information. It gives you a chance to ask yourself, why are they trying to get me so revved up? What are they trying to get from me? It's let's get rid of the regret. Okay, you'll regret things less if you don't allow yourself to decide or do something in a heightened state. Also, resist those automatic responses. Somebody does something, you give it back. That's that conditioning. Somebody gives you something, you pay them money. They give you food, you buy the product. This will often happen when you're overloaded and busy. So be careful. Again, be careful. If you have a budget and you're shopping, do not allow yourself to take anything for free, because it could convince you to blow your budget. And I don't want you to do that. Resist your automatic responses to things. Somebody's nice to you, so you agree to stand there and talk to them about whatever it is. Don't do it. If you think they're going to try to compel you to do something you don't want to do, be polite, but walk away. Remember, anything that's real, anything that's genuine, will withstand time and scrutiny. Now, I know that it is Christmas Eve, but I see a lot of you out there. So I'm sure some of you have some questions about whether something is a tactic. If I haven't described how you can get around somebody using these tactics on you, ask me. Now, you can ask me now, or you can follow me on X or Facebook, or you can even go on Rumble underneath my show and write comments there. Oh, Camille Monk says, this is very good information. Thank you. Oh, you're very welcome. As I said, I am bound and determined to make all of you manipulation proof. And I think it's very helpful that I am so susceptible to some of these methods. Show me cute kittens. Why do you think I used cute kittens? I mean, show me cute kittens and say, oh, these kittens need a home or whatever. And I'm like, oh, let me open my wallet. Ugh, I have to stop myself. Now, if you remember last episode, I talked about using methods to stop yourself. And I talked about just pressing between your index finger and your thumb to break the circuit if you're in a heightened state and feel like I'm going to be convinced to do something I know I should take the time to do. And remember, these people can be very compelling. It's a really subtle gesture. You just take your hand and just press between your thumb and phone. You know that little bit of skin in there? Just press on it. And it can break the circuit and remind you. And if you do it a lot, it becomes embedded. It becomes an anchor for you. That's NLP, neuro-linguistic program. It will become an anchor. It will allow you to stand back from whatever is going on and give yourself some time to consider, what is this? And I'm not saying that everybody that is trying to compel you and convince you is trying to harm you. Even if they're trying to help you, you have to figure out if it's right for you. You have to figure out if it's something that you can genuinely afford. Now, Kitra said, thank you. You're very welcome, Kitra. Anybody else have a question? Is there any method that you can think of that works on you? I know that a lot of them were combined. One of the things that I saw happening was standing up for the scapegoat. It's how I started following the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I didn't put it here, but sometimes when we see somebody being picked on, it makes us feel protective of them, and we start looking at them. And I think for a lot of us who started following Trump, back in 2015 when he started running for office. I think for a lot of us, that's why we did it. Because we saw the mainstream media blatantly lying about who he was, what he said, what he did. And we didn't like him being picked on. So we started following him and saying, what does this guy actually have to say? And then, of course, other forces came in when we started to see, wait a minute, somebody actually shares my values. Everyone in a position of authority isn't woke. Everybody in a position of authority isn't ignoring important problems that are causing a lot of these other issues. Somebody is willing to just bluntly say things, and he's getting blasted for it. 2 assassination attempts that we know of. He's not just getting criticized. I want to tell you something. I don't know about you, audience, but I have never seen a president treated as poorly as Trump was in his first term and after his term, where he's being publicly humiliated by foreign countries. He's being they're just going out of their way to lie about him. Yes, there are only 2 genders. We only have 2 sexes, okay? And if they are able to get you to pretend there are more, that opens the door for them to get you to believe anything. They have you then. They own you. Because they can just make up stuff and get you to follow it. The fact that Trump's like, he said woke was BS this week. Yes. As a social psychologist, I look at it, it has no credibility at all. It's a combination of wishful thinking and social manipulation. It's not based on really wanting to help people. It's not based on how we have a stronger, healthier society. Diversity only works if we share fundamental values, if we share social norms, if we share moral values, if everybody has to be held to the same standards, legally, morally. Otherwise, the society falls apart, and woke goes completely against that. And now, with their support of Luigi Maggioni, and I know I've mispronounced his name, forgive me, they are sending a signal to their followers that if you assassinate someone we hate, we will be behind you. We will support you. We will give you accolades. We'll call you sexy. We'll say we want to marry you. They're offering social rewards, blatantly offering social rewards for violence against anyone who stands against them. That cannot continue. So it's one of the reasons I also have a program, in addition to Unmasking the Abuser, which is still the only prevention education program against domestic abuse and violence in the world. I also have a program called Healing the Rift. And I think it's really going to be necessary with all the episodes that all of us have had of the extreme things being said on TikTok by Democrats and Democrat women. We need something that reminds us that we all share the same planet, we share the same country, we share the same air. We want our children to be healthy. We want our society to thrive. We want to be able to laugh and share time with each other. I have a program that's not woke that actually teaches that. And I'm doing everything I can to get around it. And by the way, if any of you are victims of domestic violence, go on my website. Let's talk about my website. If you have questions or if you would like to hire me, I actually do this as a business. Go to my website and find out everything you need to know. www.drdinamcmillan.com. And if you have suggestions, if you have an issue in your life that I haven't covered yet, that has to do with either emotions or it has to do with thinking and influence and persuasion and coercion, contact me and we'll make it a show. Or if you want to come on the show, I can have up to 10 people in the studio with me. If you're brave and bold and want to be part of the team, come on board with me. And I want to thank all of you. I know it's almost Christmas, so I want to thank all of you for being here. I'll see you next Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Bye-bye. Merry Christmas.